Among the most captivating and debated works attributed to Rembrandt is the painting traditionally known as Philosopher in Meditation, recently retitled Philosopher in Contemplation by the Musée du Louvre in Paris, where it is currently housed. Executed in the early 1630s, the small oil painting occupies an outsized place in art historical discourse. This is not because of monumental scale or narrative clarity, but rather due to its enigmatic subject, its remarkable treatment of light and space, and the haunting stillness it communicates. It is a work that resists definitive categorization, lying at the threshold between genre painting, allegory, and meditation on the very act of contemplation itself. The title Philosopher in Meditation implies an intellectual portrait, an image of a great thinker absorbed in reflection, perhaps in line with the humanist admiration for classical philosophy during the Dutch Golden Age. Yet no textual or visual evidence links the scene to a specific philosopher, nor is there anything in the figure's attributes, his modest chair, his plain interior, or his unadorned appearance that would directly signal an identity such as Aristotle, Seneca, or any other classical sage. Instead, the canvas shows an elderly man seated beside a window, bathed in golden light, while a second figure tends a fire in the shadows. To impose the label philosopher may be more an invention of later collectors and interpreters than of Rembrandt himself. The Louvre's choice to rename the work Philosopher in Contemplation acknowledges this interpretive uncertainty. Contemplation is a broader, less historically determined term. It suggests not a particular individual or doctrine, but rather a human act, the turning inward of thought, the silent process of reflection, or the search for meaning beyond immediate appearances. This subtle shift in title transforms the painting from a portrait of someone specific to an allegory of a universal human condition. Central to the painting's power is its masterful use of chiaroscuro. Light filters through the window on the left, spreading warmth across the seated figure, his table, and the surrounding floor, before dissipating gradually into the encompassing shadows. The golden illumination is not simply naturalistic. It functions symbolically, suggesting revelation, knowledge, or spiritual clarity. The spiral staircase that ascends into shadow at the right-hand side has often been read allegorically as well. It might symbolize the ascent of the soul toward higher wisdom, the gradual climb of intellectual and spiritual labor, or the mysterious path that remains hidden from human perception. Here, Rembrandt, or an artist closely connected to his circle, demonstrates not only technical virtuosity but also an ability to infuse architectural space with metaphysical resonance. The light does not merely describe objects, it interprets them, turning the domestic into the sublime. Unlike the large-scale history paintings that Rembrandt was also producing during his early career, Philosopher in Contemplation operates within the intimate scale of a domestic interior. Yet this smallness is deceptive. The painting creates a psychological vastness that seems to extend beyond its frame. The presence of the second figure near the fireplace reinforces the ordinariness of the setting. Still, The quiet atmosphere, the balance between light and darkness, and the emptiness of much of the space invite the viewer to read the scene as more than mere genre painting. What is striking is the way the painting elicits contemplation from its viewers. The elderly man's absorption in thought mirrors the viewer's own attempt to decipher the meaning of the work. In this sense, the canvas becomes performative. It does not simply depict contemplation, it enacts it. To look upon the painting is to be drawn into an act of silent meditation alongside the figure himself. To appreciate the uniqueness of this canvas, it is useful to compare it to the works of Rembrandt's contemporaries in Leiden, such as Gerrit Dou and Jan Lievens. These artists also painted scholars, readers, and candlelit interiors. But their works emphasized descriptive detail, symbolic objects, or moralizing clarity. By contrast, Rembrandt's approach here is deliberately ambiguous. He suppresses anecdotal detail in favor of atmosphere, allows light to dissolve rather than define forms, and uses emptiness as much as fullness to generate meaning. The result is not an illustration but an evocation, a painting that withholds certainty to make space for introspection. Whether entirely by Rembrandt's hand or the work of someone within his immediate circle remains a matter of scholarly debate. Nevertheless, the canvas embodies themes that would define Rembrandt's mature career. The dignity of the ordinary, the spiritual resonance of light, and the representation of inner life rather than outward grandeur. It anticipates his later portraits and biblical scenes, where narrative is often subdued in favor of psychological depth and existential reflection. Philosopher in Contemplation endures precisely because it refuses to be pinned down. It is not simply a portrait, nor a strict allegory, nor a domestic scene, but something between all of these, a meditation on meditation itself. In its quiet play of light and shadow, in its architectural ascent into darkness, and in its still human presence, the painting embodies both the mystery of knowledge and the humility of human existence. The viewer is left not with answers, but with an invitation to reflect, to contemplate, and to embrace the very uncertainty that is at the heart of philosophical inquiry. Rembrandt's The Abduction of Europa, 1632, occupies a special place in his oeuvre as one of his rare mythological subject paintings, a genre he only occasionally explored throughout his career. Painted in oil on a single oak panel and now housed in the J. Paul Getty Museum, this work reveals Rembrandt's ability to translate ancient classical narratives into powerful visual dramas that transcend their mythological origins. The painting draws its subject from Ovid's Metamorphoses, recounting the story of Europa, the Phoenician princess abducted by Jupiter, who had assumed the form of a bull. Rembrandt captures the dramatic moment of the abduction as Europa, clad in rich garments, is carried away across the water on the bull's back, while her attendants stand at the shore in shock and despair. Instead of treating the scene with the distant grandeur typical of classical depictions, Rembrandt brings the story into a familiar, almost contemporary Dutch setting. The costumes, the landscape, and even the staging bear strong Northern European characteristics, as if Europa's abduction unfolded not in the distant mythic past, but in the artist's own time. This localization of myth was deliberate. By embedding the ancient narrative in a recognizable Dutch environment, Rembrandt not only made the story more immediate and relatable, but also emphasized its allegorical dimensions. The abduction of Europa, beyond its literal telling, could be interpreted as a metaphor for loss, transformation, and destiny, universal themes that resonated deeply in a society marked by political upheavals and shifting fortunes in the early 17th century. The handling of light and color in the composition is particularly striking. Europa, dressed in luminous fabrics that shimmer under Rembrandt's golden light, becomes the emotional and visual center of the painting. The bull, half submerged in water, exudes both calm power and inevitable danger, a symbol of the inescapable fate awaiting the princess. The attendants on the shore, gesturing, leaning, and recoiling in varied postures, heighten the drama, making the viewer complicit in their shock and helplessness. What distinguishes Rembrandt's abduction of Europa from other treatments of the same subject, such as those by Titian or Rubens, is its psychological depth. Rather than indulging in overt sensuality or mythological spectacle, Rembrandt emphasizes Europa's vulnerability and the unsettling tension between beauty and peril. The scene becomes less a celebration of myth and more a poignant exploration of human emotion in the face of irreversible change. In this work, we also see the early hallmarks of Rembrandt's mature style: his mastery of chiaroscuro, his ability to create atmosphere through the modulation of light, and his narrative sensibility that turns myth into lived human experience. The abduction of Europa is not merely a mythological painting. It is a meditation on transition, fear, and destiny, rendered with the sensitivity and dramatic intensity that would come to define Rembrandt's artistic legacy. This 1632 portrait, which is housed in the Dulwich Picture Gallery, London, was completed soon after Rembrandt's arrival in Amsterdam, heralding the beginning of his association with the art dealer Hendrik van Eulenburg, with whom the artist established a busy portrait practice following the great success of the anatomy lesson of Dr. Tulp. The portrait presents Jacques de Gain, 1596 to 1641, who was the son and grandson of artists of the same name and featured as half of a pair of pendant portraits. The other piece is a portrait of de Gain's friend Maurits Huygens, wearing similar clothing including ruffs and black doublets and depicted facing in the opposite direction. Gain and Huygens were close friends living in The Hague, where the latter was secretary to the Council of State, an administrative body under the States General of the Republic. De Gain, like his father and grandfather, was a painter and draftsman, although not very prolific, most likely due to his vast inheritance. The two portraits were almost certainly painted by Rembrandt during a visit to The Hague, and it is believed that the artist was already acquainted with the sitters, as Degain already owned one of Rembrandt's early works. Unusual for the artist's oeuvre, both the portraits are under life-size, though the smooth application of paint with meticulous eye for detail more than compensates for the lack in size. The Degain portrait has been stolen numerous times, as its minute size has aided thieves in its numerous thefts. The painting has been given the nickname Takeaway Rembrandt, as it has been stolen 4 times since 1966, the most recorded of any painting. Between 14th August 1981 and 3rd September 1981, the painting was taken from Dulwich Picture Gallery and retrieved when police arrested 4 men in a taxi who had the painting with them. 2 years later, a burglar smashed a skylight and descended into the art gallery, using a crowbar to remove the painting from the wall. The police arrived within 3 minutes but were too late to apprehend the thief. The painting was missing for 3 years, eventually being found in October 1986 in a luggage rack at the train station of a British Army garrison in Münster, Germany. The other 2 times, the painting was found once underneath a bench in a graveyard in Streatham and once on the back of a bicycle. Each time the painting has been returned anonymously, with more than one person being charged for its disappearance. Rembrandt's portrait of a 62-year-old woman, possibly Eltje Peters de Eulenburg, now preserved in the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, exemplifies his early mastery of portraiture during his years in Amsterdam. Painted in oil on panel and rendered in an oval format, the work portrays an elderly woman dressed with restraint, wearing a modest black gown and a small millstone collar. More sober than the large, elaborate versions fashionable just decades earlier. The sitter has long been identified as possibly Eltje Peters de Eulenburg, the wife of Johannes Cornelis Sylvius and the aunt of Rembrandt's future wife, Saskia van Eulenburg. This connection, though not definitively established, is significant, as it situates the portrait within the artist's expanding network of patrons and acquaintances in Amsterdam during the early 1630s. The year 1632 marked a crucial phase in Rembrandt's career. His move from Leiden to the Dutch capital, his first major commissions, and his growing reputation as one of the most promising young painters of the Dutch Republic. The painting is remarkable for its psychological depth and dignity. Rembrandt's sensitive brushwork conveys the signs of age, the fine wrinkles, the sunken cheeks, the weariness of the eyes without diminishing the sitter's authority and humanity. Rather than idealizing her, he confronts the viewer with a truthful yet respectful portrayal, imbuing her with gravity and spiritual presence. The subtle play of light across her face emphasizes both the fragility of old age and the enduring vitality of her character. The oval format, relatively unusual for Rembrandt at this stage, enhances the intimacy of the composition. The restrained clothing and the plain background eliminate distractions, focusing attention on the sitter's face, which emerges as the central locus of identity and expression. Unlike the grand civic or marriage portraits of the period, which often featured elaborate gestures, accessories, or symbols of wealth, this painting insists on simplicity and directness, underscoring Rembrandt's ability to distill essence over ornament. If the identification with Eltje Eulenburg is correct, the portrait may also reflect broader familial and social ties. The Eulenburg family played a pivotal role in Rembrandt's integration into Amsterdam's artistic and mercantile elite. Commissioning a portrait of an elder matriarch could have functioned both as a commemoration of lineage and as a public affirmation of virtue and respectability. What ultimately distinguishes the work, however, is Rembrandt's profound humanism. The sitter is neither glorified nor diminished. She is seen as she is, with all the gravity of her 62 years, her wisdom, and her quiet strength. The painting thus exemplifies Rembrandt's lifelong preoccupation with capturing the essence of human existence: age, mortality, dignity, and presence. Through Portrait of a 62-year-old woman, Rembrandt not only demonstrates his technical brilliance, but also his capacity to reveal the spiritual and emotional depth of his sitters, even when stripped of luxury and external grandeur. In this way, the work stands as a testament to his role as one of the foremost portraitists of the Dutch Golden Age. The Shipbuilder and His Wife, 1633, now in the Royal Collection, represents one of the most extraordinary double portraits of the Dutch Golden Age. At first glance, it appears to be a conventional marriage portrait, yet Rembrandt transforms the genre by capturing an unprecedented moment of intimacy, spontaneity, and shared life. The painting depicts Jan Rijksen, a prominent master shipbuilder and shareholder of the Dutch East India Company, alongside his wife Griet Jans Rijksen. The identification of the sitters was only firmly established in 1970, but it immediately illuminated the work's social and historical resonance. Jan Rijksen was a man of stature and responsibility, having attained the influential position of master shipbuilder in 1620. A role essential to the expansion of Dutch maritime dominance. The portrait, therefore, does not merely record two individuals, it encapsulates the wealth, industriousness, and maritime ambitions of the Dutch Republic itself. Unlike traditional paired portraits in which husband and wife are presented in static facing poses, Rembrandt depicts an animated domestic interaction. Jan Rijksen, seated at his desk, is interrupted by his wife, who enters with a letter. He looks up from his papers with a sense of urgency, while she leans forward, hand extended, as if delivering news of immediate importance. The effect is theatrical, yet natural, suggesting an unfolding moment caught mid-action. This dynamic approach distinguishes Rembrandt's vision from his contemporaries, who often prioritized formality and decorum over lived experience. The composition underscores themes of partnership and complementarity. Jan Rijksen, dressed in sober black, embodies professional authority, his hand resting on documents that signify his role in the Dutch East India Company. Griet Jans, clad in a dark gown with a modest collar, radiates domestic responsibility and loyalty. Yet rather than subordinating her presence, Rembrandt accords her equal visual weight. Her poised gesture and forward movement suggest active participation in her husband's affairs, an acknowledgement of the collaborative nature of marriage and household management in Dutch burgher culture. Light plays a crucial role in animating the scene. It falls across the couple's faces and hands, guiding the viewer's gaze toward their exchange. The tonal contrasts, characteristic of Rembrandt's style in the early 1630s, create both drama and intimacy. The restricted palette of blacks, whites, and earth tones reinforces sobriety while heightening the sense of immediacy. beyond its technical brilliance, the painting is radical in its conception of marriage. It does not idealize the sitters as remote symbols of wealth or lineage, but presents them as partners engaged in shared concerns, domestic, commercial, and perhaps emotional. This merging of private life with public identity was deeply resonant in a society where the family unit was central to economic and social stability. Since entering the royal collection in 1811, the shipbuilder and his wife has been admired as one of Rembrandt's most innovative achievements. It marks a turning point in the genre of portraiture. No longer a static likeness, but a living drama of human interaction. In celebrating both individuality and partnership, Rembrandt redefined the possibilities of portraiture in 17th century Dutch art.